Welcome to Camp Chaos, where we celebrate the wild ride of modern womanhood.
Join us as we dish on motherhood, life's ups and downs, and all things pop culture that we know you want to talk about.
With special guests and expert insights, we're here to empower you through the chaos of everyday life.
Consider this your ultimate escape from the hustle and bustle. And as always, parental guidance suggested.
Camp is now in session.
Welcome back to Camp Chaos. Today, we are talking about breastfeeding versus formula feeding, a huge conversation in the motherhood space. We have both experienced different ways to feed our babies.
And I think first thing, it's like a fed baby
is the
best, of course, because I think it can be controversial of like what way you lean, and like some women can't produce. But yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so with Zane, I was IVF and I have breast implants, which by the way, hello everyone, at 18, I did breast implants. Terrible decision. Also, that's like another episode. Let's talk about getting them out. But I feel like I've had nerve damage. So I don't know if it was PCOS, IVF, breast implants. I had a lot of things. C-section, NICU baby,
35 weeks,
34 weeks,
34 weeks.
Like all the things against me. There was like 6 variables that I'm like, okay, why am I not getting milk? Like he was in the NICU. Another struggle was like they didn't want him to latch. They wanted to measure how much he was getting. So they're like, you have to pump. And like when you're 34 weeks delivering a baby, like your breast, like some of your milk's not even in yet. So I'm like, I never felt engorged. I never felt any of that. But I'm like, I had this Medela, like hospital grade pump on me literally every 2 hours, like power pumping, doing everything that I possibly could. And I'm like, there's just like drops coming out, like until maybe it was like a week after he was born. And then it was a little bit more. I'm like, okay, it's coming. It's coming. I've got an ounce. Like we're getting places. I was lucky enough to get donated milk in the NICU. But then after day 4, they're like, okay, it's either you or it's formula. This is another thing that like is, again, maybe a hot topic, but they won't let you bring your own formula.
I heard that
into the
from
hospital,
you and our other friends,
which is so disturbing because then they give you Enfamil. And I'm not trying to cancel Enfamil, but like, please read the ingredients on what we are giving our babies. It's garbage, literally garbage. There's all these hydrogenated oils, seed oils. There's all this crap in there. So I brought European formula and they said, no, we cannot give anything. I'm like sneaking it in, trying to feed my baby.
But are they watching you make your bottle?
The problem is it all in the NICU. It has to all go through nutrition. And I was a problem. Like it was a problem for Zane because the reason he was there, he was a grower and a feeder. And until he was eating, they were gavaging, which is like a feeding tube, all of his milk. So they wanted to measure it.
So there was no hiding.
So it was like, I was in a doomsday. I'm like, I can't get you out of here until you're eating all your feeds. And then they're going to feed you crap. And I'm trying to pump. My husband's like, I've had 3 kids before and I don't remember it being this hard. I'm like up all night.
Like Gus.
I'm like pumping like a cow. And it's like those machines like, womp, womp, womp. I'm like sleeping with it. Like, just please milk come in. Long story short, my milk never came in. The most I ever got when I was pumping was, and you obviously don't know when you're breastfeeding how much you're getting, like, or how much the baby's getting. But what I could measure, the most I would get, and that's combined both breasts, is 1 ounce, which is like, it'd be like 20 ml. And I'm like, yes, I got stuff, and like be so excited. And like, that's how you and I met, actually.
Yeah.
Where you posted that thing on Instagram and I was like, oh my God, that's me. I was in it at that time.
Yes.
So fast forward, I did this like mommy and me new mom school, and I met somebody, and like when you're basically there talking about like your struggles as a new mom.
Right.
And the first thing I said was like, I'm having a really hard time having to give my baby formula. I know breast is best. I don't care what anyone wants to say, breast is best, but my body will not produce it. So I looked into, I was giving him European formula, goat's milk. I feel like it's most similar to mother's milk. And then I found out that camel's milk is actually more similar to mother's milk. So I'm like, okay, there's this place called Desert Lands in LA. I'm like, I'm going to get this camel's milk, whatever I can do to get my baby fed and like be the most nutritious and like the best thing for him. This mom heard me talking. I'm still close friends with her now, but she's like, I need to connect you with my friend. And she put me in a group chat. This is why I love after having kids, like you have this community of like, you've got to be kidding me. You just met me. You're putting me in contact with somebody else to get me her breast milk. Wonderful. Sign me up. So she puts me in a group chat. This girl, Tiana, she's still in my phone. She's one of my nearest and dearest friends now. And oddly, you know her, but she's in my phone still as Tiana Milk Mama. She's like, I'll be there at 5:00. I'll come outside. She brings her Yeti, and I am like, okay, Gus is home. He's going to flip out if he knows I'm getting donated milk. He's going to flip. He's going to be like, whose milk is this? Well, how do you know what she was eating, drinking, doing, taking, all of the things? Like, what are we doing here? So I'm like, oh, I had to bring diapers. And I was like, this mom that I met, she ordered the wrong diaper size and I have the right diaper size. And so we need to do a swap. So I would like take a bag of diapers outside. And he's like, this is so weird. Like, what? And she would give me milk and I would put it in the diaper bag and then I'd hide it in my freezer. You guys.
No, I remember you were so crazy about this. We went on a walk in CDM and you're like, I have to tell you something. And I'm like, what? And you're like, okay, Gus doesn't even know. Like, you can't tell anybody, but I'm getting breast milk from someone. I'm like, it's not that big of a deal. And now that's like wonderful.
Well, no,
but
exactly.
You were terrified.
I was terrified because it is, well, okay, full circle here. It is very personal breastfeeding.
Right.
And like the other thing that for me of taking this mom's milk, like her daughter wouldn't drink the milk. Her daughter was also in the NICU and her daughter would refuse that milk. So I knew there was all these emotions for her that she was pumping all night. Like the bags literally said the date and then the time.
Right.
And it said like 3 a.m. I could like cry talking about it, but it would say like, April, whatever at 3 a.m. and it would be 3 ounces of breast milk. And I'm like, here's this mom pumping this milk and now she's giving it to me for my baby. Like it was just such an emotional, also my hormones,
a really big deal.
And my hormones were all out of whack. And I was having to hide it from my husband because I'm like, if he tells me no, it's going to cause World War III. I'm going to do it regardless. I know what's best for my baby. But yeah, I didn't mean to go into this. Like, this is a very loaded conversation. But yeah, it was definitely one of those things that I'm like, I got to get my baby fed. I know that breast milk is best. I had to always supplement. I never had enough of just purely breast milk, but it made me feel good that at least I'm doing the best thing for his immune system and the best thing for, like, you can argue that formula is, identical to breast milk. It's not. It's just not. And I understand that some moms don't have that option, but I feel super fortunate that I was able to have that with Zane. He had it up until he was 6 months. And then I'm like, all right, she's out of milk.
You can stop pumping at 3 a.m.
My girlfriend had a baby at the same time. And she's like, oh, it's like if she like made a joke of like, oh, it's like as if I breastfed Zane. I'm like, can I have some milk? Like if people would be at my house and if they had a baby, I'm like, can I have some milk? Like, I'm not even kidding you. One of my girlfriends said to me, she's like, oh, well, she got all scared. She said, well, my body's producing for a 2-month-old, not a 6-month-old. I'm like, give me the milk. I need the milk.
Over, lady.
Give me the boob. I need the boob. I'm like, I think you're making that up that your body's producing different things for your baby at different age. Milk is milk. I want you. Give me the boobs. Let me just pour it into this bottle. But regardless, I didn't obsess over it as much as I'm making it seem. However, I do feel very fortunate that I was able to do it. I will tell you, you're not going to bust me out. My husband does know, and he fully supports it and realizes like, yes, that was the best thing for our baby. But also,
did you do that with Zoe?
No, because I had more with Zoe. So I don't know if it was because I was a VBAC with Zoe.
Oh yeah,
she was at
term. You were breastfeeding and Zane was like jumping on you.
Yeah,
like, oh, good,
and like I could latch with her right away. I remember after her birth, I was like, I don't want fentanyl because I want her on the boob immediately. Like when I had my surgery, that's why they were trying to give me fentanyl for everything that happened. And I'm like, I want her to be able to nurse right away. I never had a letdown. Or what is it called?
A letdown.
A letdown. I'm like, God, I was let down that I never had a letdown, basically. But I never had that like tingling. And my mom would be like, you're going to be fine. Like I was fine. I could have fed the neighborhood. Like you will be fine. I'm like, Mom, I'm not fine. I'm still not getting that letdown. Never felt the tingle, but I tried my best. I had help with Zoe at night, which is such a blessing, but I would have our night nanny bring the baby in and I would try breastfeeding. I'm like, I still gave it my best effort. And then finally at 5 months, I'm like, all right, well, she's getting nothing from me and I'm trying and then I'm topping her off with formula. I need to just give up and give her straight to formula. Both of my kids are wonderfully healthy and at the end of the day, they're going to go into school and they're not going to be like, oh, were you breastfed and were you formula fed? No one will know. However, I still have this mom guilt of like, why did my body let me down and not produce milk?
Yeah, I think it's like such a big conversation because of the reason that you're saying. Like there's so many more components that go into it other than just like, I want to breastfeed my baby. I think
there's
most women think that they want to breastfeed a baby, but then one, maybe your body's not going to do it. Two, like, and I'm going to get into this because I breastfed my babies, like the emotional toll of breastfeeding is really quite insane. Yeah. And like
it differs, I feel like, when you have one kid versus 2 kids.
Yeah. And it makes your postpartum journey so different than like, I remember, okay, so Miller latched immediately. He latched really well. I breastfed him exclusively until he was 6 months old. And then at 6 months, his bottle because I would pump before he went to sleep, and Drew would give him a bottle just so we can measure the ounces because Miller was not sleeping. And then
to make sure that he had a full
to make sure he was taking a full 5 ounces, because like you said, like when you're breastfeeding, you don't know how much the baby is getting.
Yeah.
And at first we were obsessing putting him on the scale every day of like, okay, he gained an ounce.
Oh my God.
And really all you need to do if you're a breastfeeding mama and you're worried about this is judge their pee and poop diapers. Like if they're pooping and peeing regularly,
6 foot diapers.
yeah, they're getting plenty of milk. But I was just convinced that I was the reason he was not sleeping. Let's talk my favorite fall essential, you guys. It is my Jenny Kane cashmere sweater. I was actually at Mommy and Me last week and I saw another mom in the same exact Jenny Kane sweater. And we were talking about how it is one of our favorite staples for fall. It goes with absolutely everything. I wear it with my athleisure. I wear it with jeans. I wear it with my dresses. It is cashmere. The color is perfect. It is lightweight, but it feels so cozy. Honestly, if I could sleep in it, I probably would.
And yes, while their apparel is a no-brainer and so easy to throw on, I have to give credit to Jenny Kane when it comes to home decor. If you guys have seen my playroom, which is so beautiful, it's all because of that beautiful daybed with the gorgeous linen pillows, thanks to Jenny Kane. I got 6 linen pillows, and honestly, they are no-brainers because they're easy on there without the kids running over them. They just stay in their perfect shape. They're so beautiful. I also have a throw, and all year round, I just love my Jenny Kane home.
Find your new uniform and home decor at jennykane.com. Our listeners get 15% off your first order when you use code CampChaos15 at checkout. That's 15% off your first order, JENNIKAYNE.com, promo code CampChaos15. Let getting dressed be one less thing to worry about. Embrace your fall aesthetic with Jenny Kane. So finally,
Come to find out, though, you had really good milk, right?
I had good milk, but my milk was very skim. So like when I was pumping, because I only pumped once a day with Miller, and it was that nighttime one.
So it was like super liquidy?
Super liquidy. And you can see when you put it in the fridge or freezer, the separate, like the fat on top. And like my layer of fat was this much, which is not a lot for normally breast milk is like pretty fatty. So finally, at about 6.5 months, Miller, we were only giving him 6 ounces at night, which he probably should have been taking 8. So we added 2 ounces of formula into that nighttime bottle just to like help stretch him and make sure. And remember how skinny Miller,
he was a little boy.
He was a little baby. And I think it's because my breast milk was so skim. And also this goes into, which
he was lean.
He was very lean. I've talked about it on the podcast before, but just me not taking care of my body in postpartum. Like if you're a breastfeeding mom, you need to be eating 5 meals a day. You need to be having healthy fats. You need to be having electrolytes. You need to be having water, like all of those things. And I was not doing that whatsoever. But then I continued to breastfeed him until he was 10 months. I finally stopped at 10 months because it was to the point where like he wasn't going under my shirt anymore. He wasn't going underneath the cloth. I was having to separate both of us. And he was kind of playing around at that point, and they're eating solids. I'm like, what are we doing here? Let's just stop. So I stopped with Miller.
It's such a thing where I don't know about you and with Drew, but like when I told Gus, he's like, okay, what are we going to do about like breastfeeding? I said, well, I'm going to breastfeed until he's 2. And like when I was reading all the books, I'm like, sounds like that's what I was planning to do. Joke's on me. Like God's like, oh, you're going to get no milk. You're not going to make it to 2 weeks, much less 2 years. But I feel like it's breastfeeding is not just between you and your baby. It's like you and your husband. It's a very personal experience.
It's so personal.
And it's something where like, I think as time goes on and as they get older, and I'm not judging anyone that does this past 18 months, but like when the baby is no longer a baby and the baby's like a toddler and at 2 years old and is like, Mom, I want milk. Like I did a Mommy and Me with somebody that her daughter was 3 and she was nursing at Mommy and Me. And like, go you, no shame. But I'm like, that just is not for me.
Well, it just gets harder. Like
Yes.
it gets harder and harder as they get older. And I think for me, my first time breastfeeding, my first experience with breastfeeding was amazing and beautiful. But there were also so many hard moments because in the beginning, you feel so good that you are the only one that can feed the baby. You're like, I'm the only one that can soothe this baby. And then by like month 2, you're like, where
wanna
is
soothe
the
the baby.
help?
Yeah.
Where
Somebody
is
else
the
soothe this baby.
assistance?
Yeah.
Because like in the middle of the night, a lot of times like breastfed babies only want the boob. Like the bottle isn't the same.
It's a
and so then
comfort.
it's just constant. And when you're on a breastfeeding schedule, you're on every 3 hours during the day, every 2 hours as when they're newborn. So like by the time you take off your pump or finish cleaning up your breasts, and then it's like, oh my God, I have 20 minutes and I have to do it all over again. And I remember being like, when it was with Miller and we first introduced formula at 6.5 months, we used the Brezza and I made him 2 ounces and I literally collapsed. Like my knees buckled because I couldn't believe that this machine just made 2 ounces of milk warmed in 8 seconds.
Yeah.
Because breast milk, like even what I put in the fridge, we'd have to take it out. We'd have to measure it. We had to check the dates. We had to check the time, make sure it's evening milk, not morning milk.
It's a
Put it
lot.
in the bottle warm. Like it is so much work, but I am so grateful that I was able to breastfeed Miller. I just think it's important to acknowledge that while everybody wants to breastfeed and there's so many wonderful things about it, it's a really big sacrifice also that you're making as a mom. For Palmer, I breastfed her. She latched pretty well, but when she was diagnosed with hip dysplasia at 9 weeks, she had to be like, in that frog position. And so I brought my breastfeeding pillow back out and I tried to like lay her flat and just lean over and do it. But she was like,
there was no feeding that baby like that.
no.
Yeah.
And so I was still,
You're like, I'm on top of you. Please
no,
just,
I was
please
willing
just milk
to
the
do
cow.
anything. But this time around with Palmer, I was like, I know what I need to fix from the first time around with Miller. So I was eating mush in the morning. I was eating peanut butter balls. I was eating our peanut butter pretzels like 4 times throughout the day, just constantly nourishing my body.
Your body, yeah.
I got so much more milk.
Yeah,
this
you just
time
needed
around.
to eat and drink. Yeah.
Yes, my milk was fattier this time. Like it was so much
good.
better. So when I was like devastated when she couldn't latch anymore, I'm like, I'm finally have milk.
Yeah,
So I switched to an exclusively pumping mom.
Which is so hard.
Pumping is really hard, but I actually found that I really loved a lot of pumping, like not the act of pumping, but to know that Palmer every 3 hours was
that you
getting
know how much she's
4
getting.
ounces
Yeah.
of milk. Like the relief that I felt, because
That's
it is
true.
such a mental toll. Like I cannot express to you how stressed out I made myself breastfeeding.
Of not knowing.
And I'm like, it's my fault. That's why he's not sleeping. Because Miller was still up 3 to 4 times a night.
Yeah,
I'm like,
he's
it's
hungry.
me. He's not.
Yeah.
And like they fall asleep a lot at the breast. So you're waking them up. I mean, literally Miller all night. I'm like
Wake up.
blowing on him, waking him up, everything. So Palmer, while pumping,
I'm sorry to bring this up, but like isn't talking about this. Like, aren't you
It's,
worried
like,
for the
making me
number?
sweat.
I'm starting to. I'm like I'm getting like that watery thing in my mouth. I'm gonna throw up. Like you're about to go through this again.
We need to take these notes. I need to remember what I did.
Yeah.
But I've told my sister
Good luck.
that with baby number 3, I will be hybrid.
Yeah.
I will be like, okay, for example,
You're gonna have to be. You're gonna be very busy.
Well, I keep them on a 8 to 8 schedule. So like let's say you're breastfeeding or feeding every 3 hours. Okay, so all day for me is easy to breastfeed, right? 8, 11, 2. The 5 o'clock, that's normally when we're going to dinner or whatever with the kids. It is so much easier to sit at your pump for 17 minutes.
Yeah.
Pump all your 5 minutes or pump your 5 ounces, 6 ounces that you
And
need
then you
out.
give a bottle.
Go to dinner and give a bottle and make sure that they finish that bottle. I will be doing hybrid.
Well, and I feel like now, the wearable pumps, there's all these things that they've made it so much easier for us. I don't know how our moms made it through, your mom, especially with 4 children, but it's something that I feel like when you're doing it, it's so exhausting. And then you get past it and you're like, oh yeah, like talking about it back, it almost makes you emotional.
I know.
It makes
it's
you
like so cool too to know that your body is feeding your baby and that you're producing this milk. I remember I'd be so proud. But then like they're also like when you're pumping, the downside of that is you can see what you're producing, that like you experience. So you can see, oh my gosh, I only got 2 ounces today.
Yeah.
I remember in October,
and then, the problem is my mom is like, you need to drink a beer and wear a shirt and not look at the pump. You can't be, and I would be like, no, I'm looking at every drip that's going in here and what's not going in there. But that I feel like your mind body like connection, that was a really big thing for me that prevented a lot of milk coming in. And I think I had nerve damage, to be honest. Also what I think is wild of like, we've had friends that are like, oh, I can't produce, or, oh, like my milk's there, but I don't want to, or like there's all these different reasons of like, oh, my milk won't come out. Like that's happened to our friends. And then we have people that are like in my life that I know that like their husbands are like, I do not want you breastfeeding, which is like also really scary to look at like those, when you talk about those relationships of like, here's this mom that's like, oh, I want to feed my baby. And the husband's like, I want my wife back. Like, I don't want that part of it. So it is such an emotional journey. And again, a fed baby is best, but I think that at the end of the day, you need to listen to your intuition and do what's going to feel good for you as a mom.
Yeah. And I think it's really helpful to hear conversations like this and hear 2 different experiences. And I think even for me, to go back to your point in the beginning when you said the difference between number 1 and number 2. So when I was still breastfeeding Palmer. It was like the week before she got put in the brace. We were at Disneyland, of course. So I was pumping for Miller's birthday. And I remember I only got 2 ounces. And before I was getting 5 ounces. So I actually did what your mom said. Like I got a beer and I like ate extra heavy that day. But I also called my sister and said, hey, can you bring me formula to Disneyland? Because I knew with the second baby, it is, if you are trying to exclusively breastfeed your baby, that's amazing. If you need to supplement with formula one day or one feeding, like it is not going to ruin your breastfeeding journey. And I remember calling her being like, bring the formula. I'd rather her have a full feeding and she didn't end up needing it because I had it. But I was able to like compartmentalize, is that how you say it? Like it's everything that's going on, because with breastfeeding and formula feeding, there is an emotional component, there's a mental component, there's a physical component. There's so much that goes into it. But I really think fed is best, obviously. And I don't think you should feel bad whatever decision you do. Like if you want to take care of yourself, not breastfeed your baby because you can't handle that emotionally or mentally and it's too much on your body, you should feel so confident in your decision to formula feed your baby and just do the research on the formula and make the best decision with the formula. And if you want to breastfeed your baby, you should do that. Both
You're very
are
diplomatic
wonderful.
of saying this, where I'm like, America formula is garbage. Don't give it to your children.
Well, I don't use American formula either. That's why I'm
even
saying
there
like
are
do
ones
research.
that are in America like that are better, like the by heart. Like there's ones that are being made here that are better.
We're getting better in that.
We're getting better-ish. And it's shocking of like how expensive the formula is too. Also, I will say when I was doing this with Zane, remember we had that formula shortage?
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Which like I wasn't using the formula
that was
here
really
anyways,
scary.
But it was like I was ordering 12 like of the giant ones from Europe, because then when people couldn't get it here, they're like, oh, I'm going to have to get it from overseas. I think that was a big awakening too of all of these moms like, wait a second, why are we having a shortage here? And what is it? It brought up the conversation of what is actually in this formula.
Right. No, that was really scary.
I do think it was such a cool movement. And now so many more moms are using European-based formulas. But you think of like that as a mom, like there was people that I know that had our girlfriend that had a very specific formula of Infamil that her baby was colicky and like or not colicky, had the acid reflux. Like
and she was like, if you see this at any Target, please pick it up, which is so scary.
That fear as a mom of like, my baby will not have the milk that he is able to keep down and be fed. Like, what is this world that we had to worry about that as moms?
Yeah, that was a really scary time. But I do think it opened the conversation around formula.
Totally.
And I think now so many people are more aware of the ingredients in formula. And I think a lot of people have changed where they get their formula. And I mean, I don't use
You could use my Camel that I have outside.
Oh my God. No, but really, I think we both feel
I'm going to get a goat farm.
Fed
Camel farm
is best. And
yes,
you have to do, like at the end of the day,
and then
you are the mom
at the end of the day,
have to.
I just need to time mine where my third baby will be on par with your fourth baby. And then you could just feed both of my babies. You know that when my
sister would.
When we were born, my mom and her best friend,
they would breastfeed each
other's babies. They had two girls together, my sister and her first daughter, and then me and her second daughter together. This is so messed up. This is, I guess, before car seats were really like, I mean, we had car seats, don't get me wrong, but it was like you could sit in the back seat and feed the baby, and one would be driving to the mall and the other one would be in the back with the babies breastfeeding on each boob. So I was
No.
breastfed by somebody else. So I'm like, this is just lineage that like, of course I'm going to accept
That
somebody else's
is
breast
wild.
milk. I know. God, I'm unpacking a
Now,
lot.
don't use that information. I would not suggest.
No, maybe not driving in the backseat of a car, but if you were like, oh, I cannot feed this, I would, okay, if I could produce milk, I would breastfeed my friend's baby. You wouldn't?
I don't know.
You wouldn't breastfeed your friend's baby?
I mean,
Would you
okay.
breastfeed your sister's baby?
Yes.
Would you breastfeed your would you breastfeed your friend's baby?
It would depend on
Which
the friend.
Okay, well, I'm not going to ask. Now we know where she stands.
Breastfeed your baby.
Yeah, you're like, Zoe, you do not need milk, right? Is your milk in? Zoe's hungry. She's almost up for her nap.
Oh my God. All right.
At the end of the day, fed is best.
Yeah, it really is. And just like be confident making your decision, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Camp Chaos, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in to Camp Chaos. We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our show. Connect with us on social media at Camp Chaos Podcast. Until next time, campers.